Recording. Okay, we are recording. Well, welcome everyone to the November edition of the NCLA Technology Trends webinar. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Just a little bit about what the heck Tech Trends is. If you are new, we are a interest group within the North Carolina Library Association. So if you are in North Carolina and you haven't joined us, you're a member of NCLA, it's just $5. We are actually probably one of the largest committees and also, I would say, the coolest, obviously because I'm a member. But please, if you think this program is interesting, if you found our other programs interesting, please join us. We would love to have you. My name's Kate Hill. I am the Electronic Resources and Distance Education Librarian here at University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And today what I'm going to be doing is acting as the moderator for our three awesome panelists. So we are going to be doing this a little bit differently than we've been doing some of our other presentations in the past. We're not going to have one person with a PowerPoint slideshow talking about a tool. Or numerous tools in some case. We are going to have three awesome panelists who are going to be sharing their own experience with instructional technology and also hopefully giving us a kind of a broader, more pulled away look at what instructional technology can mean in education and the library. I might be sharing some of their screens, but there will be no formal PowerPoint as such. And we will also be hopefully ending this with plenty of time for questions. So if you do have any questions that you come up with during their presentation or after, please feel free to just chat them to me, and I will be sure to ask them to the panelists at the end. And so a little bit just quickly also about the content of this. We conducted a survey of our members at the beginning of the year to ask what they're interested in for webinar topics. And one of the most popular answers was instructional technology. And we knew a lot of people who were already working in this, including our three panelists, which Kyle Denlinger from Wake Forest, Katie Kavanaugh from Eastern Carolina University, and Daniel Powers, who is from University of California, Irvine. So we actually have someone from out of North Carolina. It's incredible. We're really expanding, everyone. So they're all doing really exceptional work in this area. So when we got this idea, we said, oh, we really would love to see what they have to say. But when we talked to them, they said, well, you know, a lot of stuff's already been done about tutorials and tools and all that stuff. And we were talking and we realized that something that we hadn't really seen is a discussion of how people decide if they need to make a tutorial, where to find if other people have already done work so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. How do you assess if something is maybe not even useful anymore that you made and you decide to kill it off? All of those kinds of like bigger picture questions that we really haven't heard in the nitty-gritty of tutorial creation. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And with further ado, we're going to get started. So the first question for our three awesome panelists is, what do you do? So what do you do? What do you teach? Why are you here talking to us about instructional technology?
Should I just go first?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right. Terrific. Hey, everyone. I'm Kyle Denlinger. I'm the e-learning librarian at Wake Forest University's Z. Smith Reynolds Library. You'll hear me call it ZSR for short. So as e-learning librarian, I do quite a lot of things, but primarily I support students and faculty in online and blended and flipped programs. We have a fully online Master's of Counseling, which was really the reason my position was created. But I also help faculty transition to blended or flipped courses. I help them identify content that's appropriate for online delivery. And I also teach a fully online 1.5 credit information literacy course. So I have the luxury of having students for an entire half semester. So that's part of what my library does. Is a very robust information literacy program. I think we teach about 13 or 14 sections of Library 100 every semester. So In a past life, I was also producing MOOCs out of the library, so massive open online courses, if you're familiar with those. And that had, I think we did probably 6 of those, the largest of which was a collaboration with the State Library of North Carolina on genealogy research, which ran on Canvas Network last spring. So that enrolled about 5,000 learners. So we're not doing that anymore right now, but that was kind of where I'm coming from.
Cool, thanks, Kyle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Powers. I work at the University of California, Irvine, here in sunny Orange County. I'm a program manager and an instructor, and I do a lot of instructional design help with teachers who teach online. I teach them how to teach online and best practices. I also develop MOOCs for Canvas Network and Coursera, and when those MOOCs are done, when their lifespan is over, I pull that content and put it back on our internal LMS. So I do a lot of instructional design on the back end of instructional design as well. And happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, I am Katy Webb. I'm the head of research and instructional services at East Carolina University. And I was formerly the instructional design librarian here at ECU. Teaching-wise, I mainly cover the foreign languages and teach classes in our English program, but I still make tutorials, and I am the administrator of our LibGuide system here at ECU. In another life, I also worked at Sony. I did a lot with languages there, but I also helped them create a tutorial package that they would send out with media software. So I have some experience with video editing and audio, and then I'm also really interested in graphic design. So I'll talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so first kind of real question. So first question is about strategy. So when you are looking at creating instructional technology, either modules or tutorials or classes, how do you decide what to create, and how do you decide if you should even be creating something at that point? That makes sense.
Sure. So I think it's no surprise really that there's a glut of content out there. If you're looking at, if you're searching YouTube for tutorial videos, there's everybody and their brothers producing stuff. So I really don't like to reinvent the wheel. If there's something that's passable, I wind up using it. I'm a one-person operation here, so if I'm going to create something, it's a significant time investment, especially if I want it to be polished. So I try to reserve that for when it's really needed. So for example, our course reserve system, I always get a lot of questions about that from faculty who are trying to set that up every semester. And because our system is unique to Wake Forest, that's a good opportunity where my investment in time is worth it. So I can create a step-by-step guide, whether that's a text guide or I've used the guide on the side software that I know Katy's going to talk about later. I've used that before. Or if there's something that really doesn't exist, so I created a video to promote Zotero, the reference manager software. There were a lot of Zotero tutorials, but nothing that really encapsulated what the software did in a very short amount of time. And in my first few weeks here at Wake Forest, I created one of those, and it's serving really well to get students into my workshops. So I identify those times when something might not exist or something that I really need to put the library's brand on, or something that is specific to one of our systems. That's where I invest my time. Otherwise, something else has inevitably been created, and I try to make that work. It's often really easy to, a lot easier to do kind of an ad lib screencast video. If I'm trying to answer, I've actually done this in virtual reference before. If I'm on a chat session and it's just easier to record a short screencast to demonstrate something to a patron, I'll fire up Screencast-O-Matic and do an ad lib screencast for them. And that's really where I do the bulk of the tutorial creation, if you want to call it that. It's just that short, quick and dirty email replacement kind of tutorial creation.
Thanks.
I'll talk a little bit about, building on what Kyle's talking about. When I have the need for a tutorial, of course, I'm going to do some basic Google searching in Creative Commons type websites. I'm going to see what's out there and see, again, as Kyle was saying, how polished it is. And then one of the things I think about a lot is this concept-based or is it specifically tool-based, and does that tool need to be something that's specific to join our library? So for instance, I recently wanted to teach people how to differentiate between primary and secondary sources. And there are a ton of videos out there about that, and I really did not need to make my own video about that because there's nothing that's specifically Joiner Library centric that is needed to be known about that. There was a twist to it though. It was for a foreign languages class, and this professor specifically wanted me to talk about novels, talk about films, and things that the students would be interacting with in that class. So I needed to dig a little bit deeper than just the first one off the shelf. If there is a good video and it does what you need it to do, but for instance, one of the pieces you need is to get them to it on your website, you can always do that as an infographic. You can use Snagit if you have it, or Jing to create kind of a way to show them how to get there. So you don't have to always have that initial part where you're showing them how to get to your database list or your different things that you have on your website. So I often do reuse. If there's something high impact that I want to do, something that I want to do for one of my departmental goals or a personal goal, then I will make something new. But again, I'm usually planning that far in advance and deciding to do that specifically because I feel that there's a need, or like I said, it's going to be a high impact. Now, I'll turn it over to Danny.
Thanks, Katie. I agree with both of what you said. If something exists and it's quality, there's no need to remake it. That being said, there's a lot of emphasis here at UCI about creating custom content and being in the pool of organizations that creates those resources that eventually become open. And not only that, the assumption by students that if they are paying for a certificate or degree program that they are getting custom content. So not necessarily tutorial building, in which case it absolutely makes sense to see what's out there first, but being in the space to create the content that others will eventually use, if that can be branded by UCI, that gets a lot of visibility on your own content. That being said, like Kyle was saying, it's a huge time suck to make that happen, especially with limited bodies being able to sit down and create that content. So it's with the significance of the investment, you have to be really selective about what to make. And if I can sell it and the IP is open, then I'll absolutely find something for free.
Yeah, and I'll add to that a little bit. For those that are actually creating stuff, save everyone some time and slap a Creative Commons license on what you're creating.
Yes.
So allow and give me access to the so like if you're creating a tutorial video and you're putting your brand on it, which is fine. We all want to draw visibility to our content, to our institutions. But if you put the source material up there and put a Creative Commons license on it, it saves me time so I could download it, take off your branding, put on my own, and put it back up. So again, that's not reinventing the wheel, but it is thinking about really easy ways you can save time for everyone else.
Really good point. Yes, share it with everyone. If you're putting that time in, we would all love to use it.
I'll add to that too. I mean, if you're on the compiling side and you're trying to find that content and you find some content that doesn't have the license, reach out to the originator and see if they'd be willing to license that to you under Creative Commons, because there are things out there where I just haven't put Creative Commons on it, and I just like having my name out there, to be honest. So you can use it for free, and it's got my watermark on it. Absolutely, feel free to use it. So reach out to the creator and see if you can use that content for free.
Yeah.
Great, guys. So our next question is, and I've just been also throwing, as people have been mentioning tools, I've just been throwing them in the chat so you guys can have them. So what kind of resources. You kind of talked a little bit about some things like Snagit, Jing, Screencast-O-Matic, Guide on the Side, but you're talking about like remixing things and creating, like adding things to other things that have already been created. What do you use to create these things? How do you get these things together and remix them, if that makes sense?
Well, whenever we have an internal LMS, we use the Canvas LMS. So anytime I'm creating content and compiling it, I compile it in Canvas. I'm a huge fan of that LMS. They have a great a collection point for everything that's Creative Commons. It's the Canvas Commons, and that's searchable, and you can download single lessons. You can download entire classes, and it's searchable by grade level and content topic. That's my first stop. My second stop is Google. Google Images is great because it has search tools where you can filter by reuse permission. So if I'm looking for an infographic, that's usually my first stop. Otherwise, Harvard Business Review, I link out to HBR quite a bit for business classes.
Knowing this audience, it's probably old hat to say at this point that the North Carolina State concept videos, information literacy concept videos, are videos I use heavily. They're those videos on scholarly, on peer review, or how an article gets into a journal, that kind of stuff. Those concepts that I teach in my information literacy course, where I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and those videos are stellar. They have a terrific team working there. And all of those videos, I believe, are Creative Commons licensed. They have access to the transcripts and the source materials, so really kind of practicing what we preach in libraries. So I make heavy use of those videos in my own courses, but like Danny was saying, I also make heavy use of open educational resources. So I'll search on the OER Commons to see if there's any kinds of open content that I could use. I know that I don't use this all the time, but I have pointed to it in the past. There's an open access textbook from SUNY on information literacy, and I'll get Kate that link in a second. But that's something that if you're teaching an information literacy course, you can rip out one chapter of that and add your own content to it because it's openly licensed. Going again off of what Danny said, he uses Google Images, but I like the Flickr Commons a lot. The Internet Archive has book images that they're just constantly uploading to the Flickr Commons. And it's really easy to search for materials that have no copyright restrictions whatsoever, so you can really do what you like with those images and not even worry about Creative Commons licenses, providing attribution, those kinds of things. So that's another thing that I use, is the Flickr Commons. It's a great resource.
I wanted to kind of break my ideas up into non-library stuff and then library stuff. So in a non-library category, I often use lynda.com. It does cost something that our institution pays for it. I also checked, and the North Carolina State Library has a number of seats that you can use for free if you're interested. And some of them are freely available. I learned to use the software that was lynda.com videos, but they weren't behind their paywall previously when I first started here. Often looking at TED Talks, and I do use the NCSU videos as well. Library-wise, I tend to have some institutions that I look up to or see as kind of good places to check, and so I'll check their web presence and their LibGuides and see what they have if I want to go directly to the source. So I'll check Grand Valley State University, Illinois, some of these other schools, and look at them and see if they've got anything for a particular item or topic that I'm looking for. And then the SpringShare community is vastly underused. I tend to recommend that people in my department go and look every year at new guides that have been published in a certain topic or in a field of study.
And I just love our like massive barrage of links at everyone. It's pretty great. You guys are keeping me busy with all of your like frantically finding things. Okay, so now we know where we can go to like find stuff and pull things together. So on the opposite side of that, how do you kind of, once you've made a bunch of stuff, right, how do you realize where your gaps might be that you might need to fill, and how do you figure out if something's just like, how do you assess your resources, your tutorials? How do you assess that they're working, if you need to get rid of them, if you're missing something that needs to be addressed?
Well, we actually did at ECU a tutorial gap assessment. So we looked for holes. We actually sat down and mapped out what we had. We took a look at everything we did have and then just tried to think of learning objectives that we thought were maybe missing or things that we were looking for. And also look to make sure that those are being covered in our Library 101 and Graduate 101 tutorials, which are hosted in LibGuides, but they're more than just that. I also have an extensive sandbox of sorts of tutorial stuff that I've made over the years and have kept up to date that I make available for people in my department on a secret LibGuide that they can then share back to. So if they put that into their guide, then if I change a URL or something, then it cascades to all of their guides. And that's another place that I use to kind of see all the stuff I've got. And I put those on tabs, sometimes by tool and sometimes by more topic. I don't really have anything that I've killed off, although I did have, I had a product, like a tutorial that I had made using Flash, and I ended up having to remake that because Flash isn't accessible and it's not really going to work on an iPad or anything like that. So I ended up looking for another product to use, and Danny actually suggested one, and I ended up going with that. So
what product? What product did you use?
Thinglink. I'll talk about it
cool.
in the next question too, but it's called Thinglink, and I can actually, while someone else is talking, try to bring it up on the screen. I know our video is kind of lagging, but I'll let someone else talk and I'll bring one up.
I'll transfer the presentations to you.
Yeah, one of the things I've done, this was a hard decision to make, but when I first came on at Wake Forest in 2012, we had a platform that we called the Toolkit that was already starting to show its age a little bit. And the Toolkit, it was essentially some skills-based videos that were created by all of our reference and instruction librarians. So everyone was kind of given some training on how to produce short 2 to 3 minute tutorial videos. And those were hosted on the Toolkit, which was organized by task or by skill. I was tasked with keeping that updated and just looking at the sheer scope of that project. It's amazing how quickly videos will age with changes in interface, changes in process, all of that stuff. These videos, half of them when I came on were, if not totally unusable, starting to get there. And you know, that's just the way it goes with anything that we produce. It's an investment in time, and it will eventually start to show its age. So that's where you have to really assess whether it's worth it in the first place. So we used some Google Analytics on our site and looked at page views and video views, and just kind of determined that even though these were still being used a little bit, it was probably doing more harm than good because so many of them were out of date. It made us not look very good in the library, and so we made the tough decision to abandon that kind of as a project. It was not an easy thing to do because there was a lot of pride and identity wrapped up in that product, but we just didn't have the scope, the size as an institution to keep up that platform. And since then, kind of as I do assessment and identify gaps, really the way I identify gaps is if I've gotten more than 3 emails about a thing, I'll probably create a tutorial of some sort. So that could be something simple as a canned response in my Gmail for instructions on how to do a specific thing. That's a small time investment, but over time it saves me a lot of time in retyping the same thing. I've also created guide on the side tutorials, like I said, for adding course reserves, that kind of stuff. So basically, if I've gotten the same question a few times over, and your Lib Analytics or something like that, if you use SpringShare's platform for FAQs or something like that, that will help you assess where your gaps are, I hope. and you could do something similar.
I think there's a secret cabal of school administrators who think that a toolkit will be accessible and applicable for years to come, because I have a very similar experience. As a content creator, I usually build in some kind of feedback mechanism where I rely on the users to tell me whether or not it's tired content. I try to call it myself, of course, so I'm being proactive about it. But I mean, having even a SurveyMonkey or a Google Forms feedback loop that you can rely on and make sure that even the logistical process of what you're trying to describe actually works. So if it's a step-by-step, this is how you access XYZ, have something at the end of it saying, was this useful for you? And that goes a long way, I feel. And it also keeps you humble because you'll get some good feedback probably. But if I'm working with a subject matter expert, I generally tend to trust them to troubleshoot their own content or troubleshoot their own step-by-step. But trying to kill something off, I mean, working at UCI, we have a 2-year review loop that kind of demands that we stay up to date because we're also beholden to certain credentialing agencies that put their stamp of approval on things, so they keep us current as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump back in to share my screen to show you guys the first version of something that I made and then what I replaced it with. Okay, so I'm gonna share.
I'm seeing something.
You're seeing something?
Woohoo!
Okay, so this was my previous tutorial. It was to show the different pieces of an article, and I made it using Flash. It took me a moment to figure out where this was. Basically, you just click on these buttons, and the Flash stuff, you know, has them, has this, like, color box. So then if they click on these other buttons, it kind of gives them some info. So, business methodology. So when I realized that this was looking kind of dated and so on, Danny pointed out that there is a product called Thinglink. And so what I did was I took a screenshot of the front cover of a journal article, and it's like little buttons that you can make show things. So what I'm trying to do in this is make it interactive. They would highlight this first button and it says, learn how to cite an APA. Click each of the circles on the page and write down the portion of the citation. So what I'm having them do is create an APA citation. I give them a blank on the page in front of this. And then as they scroll around, they can click on each of these different buttons, and it gives them the same information they were able to get on that Flash tutorial. And then I used, this is actually an animated answer that I created using Photoshop. So I created something that is like a moving answer. And I'm sorry that the font is really small on this right now. While
and I can just say, if you have, there was a question, Katie, are either of these ADA compliant?
The first one is not. It's Flash, so it's not ADA compliant. I don't know about Thinglink, but I can try to look it up while we're talking and see. I would think that Thinglink is more or less ADA compliant, but you can also offer a a step-by-step in a Word document or plain text as well. Because somebody with a sight impairment is not going to be able to use this in the same way, I don't think. But let me look into that. I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it over to somebody else to talk for a while.
I want to say something about Thinglink real quick. What Katie just showed is how to use Thinglink correctly, because I've seen pictures, like people will put up, generally what it is you put any kind of JPEG or PNG, any picture file up there, and you can insert small links in there that present more material. And I've seen people who are trying to give an explanation of a business analysis concept, but they put up a picture of a hamburger, and like you click on the bun and it describes requirement elicitation. That doesn't help anybody because the picture has nothing to do with what the presentation is about. So if you're going to use Thinglink, make sure to use it in a way that's actually appropriate to the content, like Katy did.
And is Thinglink free, or is it cost?
Free.
It is. Awesome.
I think you can pay to remove their watermark, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like when I first made that, I had to add an extra white bar at the bottom so that it didn't, the watermark didn't cover up something that I needed to show. And I'm not finding whether Thinglink is or not. I'm not really seeing an accessibility statement on their website or anything, but maybe I'll find something at a, while I'm looking around.
Well, so Katy already kind of talked about one way that she makes her technology interactive, because that's one of the questions that we had is how do you, we talked about tutorials and things like that, how do you go beyond the tutorial? How do you go beyond video? How do you make your technology more interactive, but perhaps more interactive, but maybe not taking as long as, making a full Adobe Flash tutorial would take?
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot in various venues, so maybe you've heard me talk about Voicethread, that I make very, very heavy use of a tool called Voicethread, which is, it's hard to describe without showing you one, but
do you want me to?
Well, I can't really show you one because it contains student responses and protect their privacy, but anyway, Voicethread is essentially a way to have asynchronous conversations through voice, text, video, comments around a document, which is usually a set of images or like a PowerPoint deck. So think of, at the most basic level, it could be a narrated PowerPoint where each slide is me on a Voicethread comment, a webcam comment, just kind of talking to the class, and they can progress through that. And it's a lot easier for me to create because I don't have to do one full take. That's perfect. I could recreate my comments on each slide. To make this a little more interactive, a lot more interactive, students, if they have a Voicethread account, and we have an institutional account here at Wake Forest, students can create, yeah, thanks for throwing that up.
Yeah.
Students can create their own comments and reply to questions and have discussions back and forth on a particular slide. So this is a great example. So you can see that people are making either text comments. I encourage my students in my online class to use a webcam comments so we can really kind of get that face-to-face interaction despite being fully online. So it's a terrific platform. I've used it in a lot of different ways. Each week my students are asked to create a Voicethread of their own, and they can kind of facilitate a discussion each week based on our topic. I've also created... Sorry,
that just started playing.
That's all right. I've also had my students respond to a Voicethread where I don't have any comments of my own, and they have, it's kind of a way to recreate the in-class discussion. And I don't know, it's really, really flexible, and it's my students really like it a lot. The other thing that I've done is instead of creating tutorials to demonstrate to my students how to use a database or something like that, and instead of showing them a tutorial, I have them actually learn how to use a tool, and then they will create their own tutorials using Screencast-O-Matic. That's one of the major projects in my class, is they spend some time with JSTOR, Academic Search Premier, something like that. I give them kind of a checklist of things that they need to incorporate, things that they might want to incorporate, and things that would be nice if they incorporated. And they're supposed to script out a tutorial of between 3 to 5 minutes and actually upload it to YouTube. And we talk a lot about our responsibilities as people with access to these tools, and by creating those tutorials, they can kind of contribute to the benefit of everyone else out there who might not have access to tutorials, although there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube. So they become intimately familiar with the tool and can demonstrate that through a tutorial of their own.
Great. To Danny, Katy, anyone else want to add anything?
I'll talk a little bit. Well, I already talked about Thinglink, and I showed a brief moment of the animated Photoshop GIF files that I've made. Let me see if I can bring up another one that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'll pass this to you.
Okay, thank you. And these are maybe a little bit, sorry, now I can't see where I can share. Let me see.
It's share my screen. Got it? The joys of WebEx.
Yay, I know. So these are a little bit basic, but I also made these using GIFs. So they basically are just little animated Venn diagrams. I also do a lot with layout, so anything that can kind of look like a, you know, make it look a little bit more interactive. So let me get back to my citation tutorial. One moment, please. One of the things I do in the citation tutorial is using fonts and different things. I try to make sure that people know that they're going to do some work here. It's not just simply reading it. So this links to the Thinglink that I talked about earlier, but they're supposed to grab information from each of those Thinglinks and then try to make a citation themselves. And so that's one of the ways. Over here on the left of this citation tutorial, there is a product called Articulate Storyline. It does cost money. Sometimes your institution will have it. Our library paid for us to have it. And it's more or less interactive in that you can click on certain things. It's a lot like a PowerPoint that has more interactivity to it. So those are some of the things that we have used to make it a little more interactive. But anything that can be like an infographic or using layout to make it look a little bit more interesting, or something that people feel like they can actually physically do something even if it's on paper while they're doing that, that's one way that I try to make it more interactive.
Yeah, I could not agree more that structure and font and general design choices are hugely, hugely important. There's a really good book called, what is it called? Designing for the Way People Think, I think is what it's called. And I'll link to that in the show notes.
There's another one called Don't Make Me Think.
That one's so good.
So yeah, and I wanted to add, I mean, general, for me, I guess it would be course structure, or maybe it would be tutorial structure or module structure for smaller projects, in a way that makes it in any way gamified. So conditional release, where you have to do this one thing before you go on to the next one, and if you do all 4 of them, then hooray, a little emoticon pops up or something. Like very small things like that trigger the reward center and make it a lot better for the people going through your tutorial. I also wanted to say we use Voicethread a lot. It's a great tool. I'm also a big fan of, or I was a big fan of Zaption, which was something that I think it was bought and dissolved very recently, 2-3 months ago. But a new version of it has come out. It's called Hapyak, HAPYAK.com. Basically, you can import any video that's housed anywhere, like a YouTube video, and you can edit that video to overlay automatic pauses and quiz questions. Based on the answer to the question, it can jump to a different part of the video. So it's a really good way to have threaded videos based on whatever the answer is. It jumps to a different part of the video, which could either be a refresher or an entirely different content thread. So Hapyak, which is the new Zaption, is a tool that I like a lot for enhancing content that already exists. Even a YouTube video that's Creative Commons, you can pull that into Hapyak and mess with it and make auto pauses and quiz questions and stuff like that.
There's a similar, it's not a similar tool, but a similar concept. So TED, TED Talks, they have TED Ed lessons. So you can take a video and flip it, they say. So I'll post a link to that as well. I've not used it recently, so it might have changed considerably, but your mileage may vary.
And there are other ways to, I mean, if you have MS Office, there's a plugin called Office Mix, which kind of does the same thing, and you can record single slide recordings, so you don't get 10 minutes in and say something that you wish you hadn't or something. So you can record audio for each individual slide and put in quiz questions as well. That's Office. I think it's called Office Mix, and it's a PowerPoint plugin.
Okay. Does anyone have? So that we're going to move on to our last question. And so you guys are all kind of sharing all these great ideas, and this is one of the ways that we make a community of practice around this topic, is to all share. How have you had any, we got this question because I think a lot of people are like, where do I find out about this information? How do I keep up? How do you locate or create a community of practice around this topic?
Well, I'll start with this one. I actually talked to Danny. So I will bounce ideas off of him, or I'll send him something and say, I'm trying to replace this, or I'll ask him, what are you working on right now? And then I also have someone, I'm lucky to have somebody in my department who has a similar but varied skill set from mine. So we're working on an OER together, an InfoLit or OER. And he has a different skill set than mine. He does more like 3D renders and some things like that. So he has different video and audio skills than my video and audio skills. And so we kind of bounce ideas off of each other and figure things out that way. So mine isn't really a community of practice like a big group of people, but it's definitely some people that I know things. I'll bounce ideas off of them.
Mm-hmm. So one of the ones that's really important for me, and I see Patrick at Elon is here, so hi Elon. So NC Light is kind of an informal twice yearly meetup of library instructional technology types. So we have people who come from all different kinds of institutions really, but it's mostly academic, coming from universities across the state. So we'll meet up in a different library twice a year. So coming up in just a couple of weeks, we'll be at Elon. I'm not sure where we're going to be meeting up again in May, so we always do a summer and a winter meetup. But we get together for kind of an informal half-day conference where there's campus sharing, there might be some lightning talks, there might be some breakout sessions. It's really kind of different every single time. But it's a great way to make connections to people doing similar things at different kinds of institutions. And it's just a lot of fun. We often go out for lunch afterward, and you get to see the same people almost every single time. And new people are coming all the time as well. So I'll post a link to the website, and you can get signed up on the Listserv to keep in touch and find out about the next meeting. I think Elon is probably closed at this point. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I would second that. I mean, it is
and
really,
it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
Yay!
It's not a huge commitment. It's just, meet twice a year, and we usually try to plan it so that people can make it after the semester is over. Sorry for interrupting, Pat.
Oh, that's okay, and that's important to mention that it is free. I posted the link to we have a Google site. There's a way you can find out how to get on our listserv from there. And the other thing, so I use a lot of OER. We've talked a lot about open resources in this panel, but Spark, the scholarly communication group, they have a library OER listserv. It's called liboer, so just Google liboer Spark, S-P-A-R-C, and that's a terrific resource for connecting with people that are using OER in libraries, and they help you find things if a faculty member comes to you for help finding something. It's a terrific listserv. It's very active.
I have a few things to add. I agree, and this is kind of echoing what Katy and Kyle are talking about, is just surrounding yourself with people who do this kind of work. And here at UCI, I mean, it's a huge campus, and every department has their own instructional design team, so finding the one person who loves to talk about this kind of thing. Like I have Natalie Blair at the School of Business, and I have Heidi Beasley at engineering, and we talk to each other every week and share ideas about new content and new structure ideas and things like that. And Katy talks to me a lot, and I talk to Katy about ideas and stuff like that. But you also mentioned you have I think the acronym was NCLA, and we have something similar for the UCs called IDFS, Instructional Design Faculty Support, and it's free, and it's a monthly meeting, and they share a bunch of content ideas as well. But if you're looking for something that's more national. And eLearning Guild is a really good resource as well. I can't remember how much it is. It's pretty cheap to join, but I get emails from them and I get ideas from them every single week. And eLearning Brothers is another one. I think that's attached to the same thing, the eLearning Guild. And they have free content resources all the time. Anything from lesson structures to free icons and infographics. eLearning Brothers is a really good resource as well. Besides that, yeah, just surround yourself with people who do instructional design, who are interested in open resources, and things will come your way for sure.
Well, does anyone have anything else that they are desperately wanting to say on this panel?
I had just one more thing. Danny,
yes.
was getting free stuff. They're at Creative Market. They have some free stuff every week, and it comes in an email, and I get new fonts and new little layout things and icons and things from that. And there was another one, but I can't remember it right now. But Creative Market is the one that I tend to go to get little free icons and stuff. A lot of it is for sale, but they have every week 6 free things. And sometimes you get like a really neat PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes it's like a WordPress theme and things like that.
This has been so great. So we now are at the end of our sharing with the panelists. So if your brain isn't spinning from all this great information, if you want to have if anyone has any questions, feel free to just chat them, and we can ask them to the panelists.
Oh, I want to call out Ian. I don't know how to say your last name. Boucher, maybe. He said he's experimenting with clickable games using Office Mix. I think that's such Boucher. Sorry. Okay. He says he's experimenting with clickable games using Office Mix. I mean, some people are quick to dismiss gamifying lessons, but it's been hugely successful for us at UCI. So that's something that I would definitely recommend playing with. If it's going to be Zaption, well, not Zaption anymore, HappyAck or Office Mix or anything like that, make your videos, especially long lecture videos, make them clickable, make them auto-pause, even just to check that people are paying attention. I think that goes a really long way into interactivity.
I'm going to give people a little bit of time to write questions, because I know that we don't have mics, so it's harder to shout things out. Sorry, it's not super interactive. Like I would have liked it to be with all this discussion about interactivity. And yes, we did have a question if we were going to be sharing these. Yes, we'll be sharing the recording, and then I'm going to make sure to copy this entire chat and share it with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I'm trying to think if I've got any questions for you all. I kind of wrote all my questions. Does everybody know what guide on the side is? Did everybody have people seen that?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, here, I'll just show one really quick as a kind of a fun thing.
Bonus, guide on the side.
Guide on the side, okay. So guide on the side is where you can take a video, or sorry, a website and do an overlay. So the ones that I've done are, let me move it. So it's basically a working web page on one side, and then on the other side you have a tutorial. And I made some little icons for mine. I wanted it to be interactive. I don't want it just to be them reading this side thing. I want them to do stuff. So I made these little icons, which are totally shareable from our website as well, that when I want them to do something, I have this little, let me click to one, where I say, your turn, consider your topic, what keywords do you think would be best for this search, click the link to see the answer, and then they can click, they can click on, they can click right here under the answer and see that, and then it can read fold up. This is the keyword I said for them to use, so then they can actually do the search in here. And sorry, I'm hoping this will work. Now they see that they got a bunch of sources here, and then I'm asking them to click the scholarly checkbox. So this is basically a tutorial that leads them through how to do research, but they actually have their hands on it the whole time. They're not watching a video and then abstractly applying that to something. So I'm going to share.
So that's open. So that's open source. Is it challenging at all to like install at your library?
I have to admit that it requires.
I hear open source and I go.
Yeah, it's like as some people jokingly say, it's free like puppies. So the open source part of it is great, but it requires a Linux server, and you know, they're links on a server. They don't take up a ton of space, but you have to have that server. And so if you don't have experience installing something that way, you need somebody with tech experience to help, and it took us a while to get that working.
Yeah. And this actually reminds me of something quite similar. I've not actually used this in a teaching context yet, but there's a product called Hypothesis that's for web annotation, and its applications for information literacy I see being kind of through the roof. It does a similar kind of overlay where you point Hypothesis to a URL, and then it puts an annotation overlay over that website. You could share that overlay with an individual or with a student, or you could have all of your annotations be public to everyone who's using the tool. So it kind of creates another layer over the web for making notes and highlights and comments and all of that kind of stuff. And that's I posted a link there in the chat, and that's something I'm hoping to explore here in the next year as I teach more online. So.
Awesome. I've learned about a couple things. Thank you.
I know, me too. It's really exciting. I'm like, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about, a bunch of things. I didn't know about Happy Hour, all this stuff. Well,
I will add one more thing. If it's available for your LMS, definitely start playing with LTIs. I don't know what the LTIs are. Learning tools,
interoperability.
That's the one.
Okay, yeah.
So third-party tools that tie directly into your LMS. There's, just speaking for Canvas, because we're waist deep in Canvas here. There are just hundreds of tools out there that are free to use, and they enhance the content that already exists. So if you have an LMS that has a lot of LTIs built into it, definitely explore those.
Annie, do you want to talk about badges at all? I know this is kind of related but not related. Have you done anything with badges? Because, you know, I know you talked to like Badger.io.
I've used it with Canvas Network. We haven't really gotten on board as much as I would like at UC, just because of FERPA compliance concerns. But it's on the radar for sure. So the way that we're using it right now is we have conditional release modules in classes that basically give a JPEG. So it's not something that's being pushed out to a backpack or LinkedIn yet, but I can see that happening in the next 6 months. There's Badger, and then there's another, Credly is the other big one we've been working with lately. But it's coming for sure. I mean, I think that the certification of badges that have metadata attached to them that you can push out to your online resume or something like that, it's getting more and more traction. It's something that's going to be really valuable to paying students, I think, especially in the certificate game. So it's definitely worth looking into. We're just not quite
there. Yeah. I know we've been trying to do that a little bit. UNCG, we've been talking about it, and yes, the FERPA thing is an issue, a thorny issue, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank everyone so much for coming to this webinar and listening. As I said, I will get this recorded and I'll get it shared. I'll probably give it to Jenny and she can get it on Jane Dale, our brave and wonderful president, who will get this on the website, and I will also make sure to grab all of this awesome links that we've been throwing up at you to share with everyone, because sometimes the recording doesn't record the chat, and obviously we really want the chat recorded right here. Well, I just want to thank our amazing panelists. We can't clap for you because we all have things, but yay! Thank you so much for coming and spending your Tuesday afternoon or mid-morning in the case of Dennis with us today. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.